Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Child Protection and Family Services Agency redoubling efforts to protect children. Jamaican scientist urges residents to go back to mask wearing. And later in sports, last season's beaten finalists make JPL playoffs on the final day. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shamela Pullen. Here are the details. The Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, says it will be redoubling its efforts to protect the nation's children. The agency also says it is working to have less children in state care. More in this report. At present, approximately 4,500 children are living in state care. Michelle McIntosh Harvey is the acting chief executive officer of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA. The CPFSA head says the plan is to significantly reduce the number of children in these facilities. She says a more familiar setting would be better for them.
And so one of our things is that we try to help parents, because sometimes once we help the parents, the children can be reintegrated. If it is that perhaps we have to have them go into foster care, so that's another robust program that we have where they're in foster care, so they get that individual love and attention. And then of course we strengthen the personnel at the homes so that they can give the children that care, that love, protection. So you have to keep retraining, but ideally we don't want them living there.
Despite this, she says these children do well in schools, especially in government exams.
Coincidentally, every year we recognize our children who pass CSEC and CAPE, right? And it is one of our highlights then. And this year, our top girl actually lives in a facility. Normally is in foster care. And I found that very interesting, and that she's also not at one of the traditional schools, right?
Wow.
So she got 8 subjects, 6 1s and 2 2s.
As it relates to children going missing, she says the agency will now have to redouble its efforts to protect children.
So let's see how we can protect them so that there are no more children lost under these kind of circumstances. Every year we get the statistics, 60 children, 100 children being lost. You know, it's souls being lost. And if we were able to protect them in the communities, because again, it's not just us. It is a community. It's a part of our strategy at the agencies. We go out into the communities. We try to speak with them where they are, speak with the parents, speak with teachers, everybody, to get everybody on board.
The CPFSA collaborated with the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation recently for a service in downtown Kingston to mark Child's Month 2023. It was also a moment of reflection on children who went missing. Some never returned, while others were found dead. Mayor of Kingston, Delroy Williams, is making this appeal to citizens to protect the nation's children.
Our children face violence within our society, and that is something we have to confront. And that's something that we have been confronting, but we can't just confront it as a municipality, as a KSAMC. We can't just confront it as government. We have to confront it as a country, as all of us together.
There has been an increase in the number of homeless people in Jamaica. That's according to local government minister Desmond McKenzie. He says there is also a significant increase in the number of attacks on people living on the streets. Mr. McKenzie was speaking at the opening of a night shelter for the homeless in Falmouth, Trelawney last week.
Portland alone, since the beginning of this year, I've seen vicious attacks which result in the death of at least 3 homeless persons in Port Antonio. And we're seeing where over a year ago, 5 youngsters. None of them not older than 22. Burned, light, fire, dose and homeless man with gasoline.
One leading Jamaican scientist is calling on the government to find ways to encourage Jamaicans to go back to mask wearing. Professor Errol Morrison says this is important as most of the viruses circulating are deadly. The details in this report. The World Health Organization ended the global emergency status for COVID-19 on Friday, more than 3 years after its declaration. As a result, some persons have become complacent, especially in certain areas like mask wearing. But Professor Errol Morrison is warning Jamaicans not to drop their guard.
I see, a number of get-togethers going on, people maskless, and going into enclosed buildings and so on, people are maskless. Now, let us not forget, COVID isn't going anywhere.
Professor Morrison says there is evidence that suggests when persons wear masks, it lessens the prevalence of viruses floating around in the environment.
I have seen it for decades in the East when you travel in China and the Far East. You see individuals in the airports wearing their mask. And this has been going on for decades now, as I've indicated. So they have learned the importance of protecting against these droplets that can give you the infection. And I want to strongly recommend it to our population here. Stay masked.
It's why he argues that the government needs to encourage mask wearing by providing incentives to persons who are willing to do so.
That kind of encouragement may come in line with some of the sweeteners that we hear the minister speaking of, as to encourage individuals to protect themselves against the chronic diseases. If they're getting some kind of enticement like that, it may encourage individuals to keep up that mask wearing. I think it is most important that the government should be giving that message. Stay masked, stay away from individuals and crowds as much as possible.
And the messaging around public education is also critical. Professor Morrison says the methods used should be very simple, reasonable, and understandable.
Remember, a significant proportion of our public are not reading, either won't read or can't read, or both of the above. And so we need to be able to get these messages out in a variety of ways, by radio, by television, by word of mouth, by getting campaigners out there, moving amongst the village communities and so on, getting the message out. That word of mouth is most important.
Last ounce of patience. That's how residents of Drapers in Portland describe being without water for 3 weeks. It's why they blocked the streets this morning, forcing commuters to walk the distance. Jamila Maitland reports.
Old tires, appliances, trees and other debris blocking sections of the Drapers Main Road in Portland Monday morning. Frustrated, the residents are protesting the lack of piped water from the National Water Commission.
No water, can't do nothing. Water, they have to come with some water, no.
The result, commuters including students were forced to walk the distance in the boiling hot sun. Others opted to have their children stay home because of the uncertainties surrounding the protest.
The water and the road block everything in one.
The blockade spanned from Clear Spring to Zion Hill, and according to residents, it will remain until they speak with their Member of Parliament. They argue that last weekend was the last drop of patience they had.
Be a mode. Last thing Saturday mode. This Saturday mode. Come on, man. Water, man.
When I say mode,
we need to see Alma Rivers and we not pull the road until we see her. Simple. As she we give with what and as she we want water.
When I say mud, what you mean?
No red mud. Red mud.
I come through the pipe.
I come through the pipe for water. We can use that beard. I kill them, I kill we. Them I kill we slowly but surely.
And to add insult to injury, the residents say they still receive monthly water bills.
I 7,000 and I buy water for what you want to do. Some people give me 7,000 and pay water bill for what? What am I pay for? They give me no service? Then go, man.
Damini Thompson is blasting the NWC for its lack of communication regarding the water lockoffs.
The NWC, they do not communicate. There's a lack of communication. I've spoken to them time and time again. And they have not corresponded. They have not fulfilled their end of the bargain. We are paying customers and they are not doing what they are supposed to be doing. Communicating. Those communication, that's all we need as paying customers.
But he argues that with the road improvement project underway, the need for water is greater. Already, residents are reporting respiratory issues. It's why small business operators like Nadine is weighing her next move.
Last week, me there, doctor. Last week, Monday, the whole inside of me. The dust and the bed, every look there. Look there. Look there. Look there. Look there. You can write your name. Every morning, me come here, me have to wash down and clean down.
Jamila Maitland, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, a St. Catherine community is calling for improved service from the National Water Commission as they say the irregular supply is disrupting their lives. Noting that the community has several natural water resources, they now want the minister and the MP to address their problem.
We need water, the call from residents of Above Rocks in St. Catherine. They say for weeks they have been without the commodity and it's affecting their livelihoods.
How can I live so? Apart from me, I feel bad now, not even where I can go. Because the water not clean.
The water system is so bad and the river is far away from me. So I can't get no water. I have 200 chicken and sometimes some of them all are dead. I know I thirst because the way them a gap and I behave. I know say it's the water system where them not getting properly why them a gap.
Their cries also being echoed by Councillor for the Division, Neil Powell, who says that the community gets water at least 3 times per week. But he admits that it is still not adequate. He says the area has enough water resources for the community to be fed with a constant supply of the commodity.
The distribution process is hampered by manpower and a lack of people in dereliction of their duties. And of course, I think it must stop because look at the water.
Look, everywhere a black road and I'll demonstrate for water. We not do it, Kawa. We should not look for get water. St. Catherine have too much water for water. We then say we're surrounded by wood and water. We're not supposed to have black road and a bunty and cut down tree and road to get water. A foolish them thing there.
Hence, this call on the National Water Commission.
We want a system that the water can stay in the pipeline every day. And then after you set up and upgrade the system also, the people, they have a willingness to pay. So you just go as a water commission to ensure, and I as a councillor will also, put an effort in to ensure that the people get that willingness and that urge to pay. It is full time now for all of this to stop because it is not going to cost much, as I said before, to upgrade the system. Or if people are not in dereliction of their duty, we would be still having water, especially like today, where you see the dam overflowing and going back in the river.
In the meantime, the residents are calling for an urgent meeting with the minister with responsibility for water and the member of parliament for the North Central St. Catherine constituency. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
It's now time for the Business Minute.
Jamaica's net international reserves, NIR, increased at the end of April. The NIR increased by $19.5 million, coming in at $4.17 billion. At the end of March, the country's reserves amounted to $4.15 billion. April's reserves could cover 27 weeks of imported goods and services. Further afield, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has warned a failure to raise the U.S.'s debt ceiling could have dire consequences. Without an agreement to increase what the federal government can borrow, it could run out of money by early June. At that point, the federal government might not be able to make wage, welfare, and other payments. In an interview with ABC News on Sunday, Ms. Yellen said debt ceiling negotiations should not take place with a gun to the head of the American people. But time is running out for an agreement. On Tuesday, U.S. President Joe Biden will meet Republican leaders to ask them to agree to raising the current $31.4 trillion limit. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm O'Shane Masters.
It's now time for the top regional and international stories.
In regional news, British Virgin Islands BVI Premier Natalio Wheatley says the United States should do more to help his country stem the flow of guns. Wheatley, who was speaking during a press conference, made the statement as the community of East End continues to reel from a recent murder. He also says CARICOM continues to lobby the U.S. to do more to stop the illegal weapons that leave its shores and are bound for the Caribbean. While the BVI remains one of the safest Caribbean jurisdictions, it has seen a rise in murders and drug-related crimes in recent years. On the international scene, wildfires have forced the evacuation of nearly 30,000 people across the northern and southern regions of Alberta, Canada. Authorities say 16 new fires ignited in the province over the past 24 hours. Overall, firefighters are battling more than 100 fires. Only a third of them have been contained. Authorities say the fires have charred nearly 400,000 acres so far this year.
The conditions that we've seen over the last few days, which have made things very challenging for firefighters across the province, have been alleviated by some precipitation and humidity that we've seen in the south, but up north it's still very dry. We're still seeing winds, and we are expecting a continuation of those kind of conditions that can lead to extreme wildfire behavior.
News further afield. The number of people killed during clashes in India's Manipur state this month has risen to 58. A further 260 people have been hospitalized, according to hospital officials, as members of two ethnic groups have clashed in the streets east of India. Officials say gunshot wounds are the most common injury at Imphal hospitals. Indian army troops have been deployed to the streets, and a 5-day mobile internet blackout is in force. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Raquel Porto.